Today, I wanted to take a look at background scroll effects inside of Editor X. They're a way to make the scrolling of images a little bit more interesting when you're going through a web page. There's quite a few different examples, from using parallax to animating custom animations, and just trying to play around with them so that you can make your own website more interesting. Let's have a look right now. Here is a brand new page with Editor X. We've got nothing on here yet, but we want to apply a background scroll effect. Now, traditionally, what we would do is select to add an element and drag and drop an image here. When we do this, we can expand out this image to utilize this entire section. Now, right now it's a static image. So if, for example, we were to add a composition in here, such as maybe a frame below and above that we can utilize. Let me place one in now so that we can have as an example, such as this here for maybe a footer, and then maybe one more section here above as an example for maybe a section above here. What we'll notice is that the image itself here is static. As we scroll through, it doesn't move. We want to add a background scroll effect to this image. Now, we have only a few limited options to do so. The very first is if we head over here to settings, and if we go here to the scroll behavior. Here we have two options, one for parallax and one for reveal. If we select parallax, we're going to get a parallax effect, which we can't right now preview in this inspector view. We'd actually have to preview the entire page. But when we do, we can see that parallax effect has taken effect. If we were to edit the page, the other type here we have is this reveal. If, for example, we do another preview of this page, you'll see that instead of this parallax effect, we're actually having sort of like a fixed background image position being applied so that it always looks like it's existing there. But when we're hovering between two different sections, it has this nice effect of being almost like a window towards this mountain. Now, unfortunately, these are the only options you have if you do the traditional way of placing an image inside of a section. But there is another way to be able to incorporate background scroll effects when you're not, for example, placing images in. And this is by selecting the section itself. Here you can head over to the inspector menu, and on the right hand side you have an option here for design. This here allows you to add in a background image for the section without adding it as an element. Let's actually do this now. Instead, I'm going to select this Sydney, is it Sydney? I can't tell, cityscape. I'm going to select to use this background for this section here, and right now it's more or less the same. If we preview this, we can see that it's static. But if we want to add some scroll behavior to this, we can select the option here for background scroll effects. This is pretty cool because now we have a lot more options. You might be aware of some of these, but we have things like parallax, reveal, 3D, skew, close-up, rotate, zoom in, pan. Let's actually have a look at how this might work. I'm going to select parallax here, and we can see that I've implemented it, and we can immediately see that something has changed. It's not the full parallax effect, but it does give us the insight that something happening here for the scroll effect. We actually have to select preview once more for this parallax effect to take effect. But we can see now it's got this nice movement as part of the scroll behavior, which is great. If you want, you can actually test out some of the other examples that you have here. I like this close-up effect that we have here. You can't see it on the essential preview unless you actually preview the page itself. But when you do, you get this effect of a zoom, basically, and you're zooming into the city as you're scrolling down. I really like this. It also sort of fades out as you keep scrolling. I think you'd need a really high resolution photo for this. But either way, this is a really cool effect that I definitely would like to implement one day. Another example here is, for example, this skew effect. Now in this case, it might not work particularly well for a cityscape because it looks like I'm a little bit drunk, but it's still an interesting effect depending on the type of image that you're using. Now, these are just some examples of scroll effects. There are other ways you can implement them. For example, if you wanted to create a scroll effect inside of a container, I have some unfortunate news. It's that you won't really be able to do so traditionally. Instead, you do still have to work within the sections that you're in. But you can always apply elements to exist on top of other elements to give you this sort of idea that they are their own container. Such as, for example, adding this black to the left-hand side of this section. And if we, for example, now preview it, we should feel like it is continuing on from this left and right side. So like it is its own container just in here. There are, of course, other ways we can implement different types of background scroll effects. For example, in this section here, I could create a 2x1 grid. Similar to before, I could drag in 2 images over here. This time, for this one section, I'm going to make the minimum height 200 view height, which means that it'll take at least 2 scroll lengths off your screen to be able to go through everything. On the left-hand side here, I'm going to expand out this image to be full-sized, and I'm going to select the scroll behavior here to be on reveal. This basically means that this image will not actually ever change. Here on the right-hand side, instead, what I'm going to do is copy paste a couple of different images here. And I'm going to select to change each one of these. We'll just select a couple of quick pictures here so that you can see what I mean. And what we're going to show is how you can have a fixed position for your scroll on the left-hand side, while different elements are moving on the right-hand side. If we select to preview this and we scroll through, you can see an example of what I mean. I can continue to scroll the page, and while the image on the left is staying, the images on the right are scrolling. There's lots of different ways you can play around with this effect, but just be aware it's another way that you can utilize different types of scroll effects to your purpose, depending on how you're building a site.